Welcome to another episode of the Thunderstock Show. I'm your host, Ross Stockdale, owner and fractional CMO of Thunderstock Marketing. As always, the goal is to bring valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's guest is Rachel Strella, owner of Strella Marketing. Rachel, how are you doing today, and what's new?
Hey, how you doing? Hey, it's the end of February here, so what's new is that means we're closer to spring.
Yeah, for sure. So, Rachel, I've known you for over a year now through Vistage, but you've been a part of Vistage for some time. How has your journey in entrepreneurship, how did it get started? And how long have you been doing what you've been doing?
So, well, I've been doing this for 15 years, and it got started by default, which is probably the story of most people. I didn't go to business school or anything like that. I basically was in marketing and sales for years out of college. And I had a mentor at the time who was like, seeing me go through all these jobs. She's like, you might be an entrepreneur. And that day she had just went to some like boot camp for social media and she was so overwhelmed. She's like, I don't want to do this shit. She's like, I don't want to do it. She's like, would you like help me get set up on LinkedIn and stuff? I'm like, sure, and at the time I wasn't even 30 years old. So like, you know, she was just looking for me to help her out, and I did. And she was like, you could be the person who helps people do this. And I was like, yeah, I could. And so the first like customer that I had, we were like, we don't want you to actually like show us how to do this. We just want you to do it for us.
Hmm,
And so that's
Interesting.
kind of like how social media management began.
Interesting. So you had a mentor that had a need, and you're like, I can fill this need. And then they're like, you can do this for other people too. And you're like, I could. And then 15 years later, here we are. So, what was it like in the first 12 months when you were getting started? And Um, what are some of the things that you did then that you look back on? You're like, I can't believe I did those things.
Well, I started alongside my day job.
Mm,
I was able to actually leave my day job in about 6 months, which was great. I got really lucky in the beginning, but I hit the ground running. Like I was networking, I was doing everything possible to just get it going. I was really excited and passionate about it. There wasn't a whole lot that I say that like I look back on, I'm like, what was I thinking or why would I do that? Um, other than like, okay, so do you know who Jeffrey Gitomer is? He's like, he
sounds
wrote
familiar. Yes, he wrote
Little Red Book of Sales. He
Sales
wrote,
Bible, I think.
yes, Sales Bible.
I
Yes.
have that one. Yeah.
So he actually became another mentor of mine back in the day.
Oh wow.
He used to work with the Hilton for a long time. I don't know if he still works with them or not. So he comes to town on occasion. We met up and he was looking at, I created this, I thought I was clever, Central PA Webster LLC, because I thought I was real clever, right? He goes, what the fuck is that? He had a name. He's like, use your last name. Your name is your brand. So he gave me three pieces of advice. He was like, get out of bumfuck, meaning get out of like the central Pennsylvania area, change your name. You're close enough to the local areas that you can actually do some networking in like New York, DC, high level places. Uh,
Hmm.
change that name was like the biggest one though, and he's like double your rates and fire half your clients. So those are his three pieces of advice. He was no
Wow.
and I followed his advice. And he was one of many mentors over the years that you need that slap in the face sometimes to just get it together. Because if you keep going on that trajectory, you're never really going to get anywhere.
Mm. Hmm.
So
Interesting.
yes, I that was the first thing, I changed that name. So I still have that LLC, but my DBA has been Strella Social Media.
Did you move out of central Pennsylvania and move back, or how'd that work that was one of his
No, well, I
pieces of
was in
advice?
Philadelphia for a while, but when he said get out of here, he meant like don't get all your business right here in like Harrisburg, you know,
Okay, yeah. Don't do all of your business in your backyard.
like yeah. So, and
Hmm.
that's right. And most of my clients actually aren't in Central PA, and there's nothing wrong with the clients I have in Central PA. He just meant you have a bigger world out here than what you're limiting yourself to in your backyard.
Yeah, I think Central PA is a very unique market, heavily influenced by the playing community, and it's like incredibly conservative in terms of, especially for marketing, like budgets. You
Yeah.
know, some businesses I've talked to, it's like 3% of their top line revenue. That's really pushing it for a marketing budget. They're going crazy. And I talk to other businesses that are doing like 15 to 18% of their budget, and I'm like, of their total revenue as their budget. And I'm like, oh wow, this is
Yeah.
5 times more.
It's so hard to explain to anybody outside of Central Pennsylvania why Central Pennsylvania is so unique.
It is unique. So, but a lot of your business is outside of there. So, after that conversation with Jeffrey in the beginning, at what point did you start doing Vistage?
Oh man, it was a couple years. I met John Dame a few years later, and John Dame actually really changed the course of my business. I was looking for another coach and mentor, and he came along, and I was coaching with him for a couple of years before he was like, you should come to Vistage. And I think you're ready for that next level. And so that's what I started doing. And that was a different level than coaching. Vistage was a whole different level.
Mhm.
And I did that for about 5, 6 years before I jumped groups again. But
And is
yes,
that because he switched what he was doing, or I don't know much about the man. I've heard of him, but
why I stopped working with him and the Vistage group I was in.
yeah, yeah. What caused you to switch groups?
So what actually ended up happening, he was moving away from some of his groups and passing them on to other people. But what actually ended up happening was pandemic. I'm
Mm,
not set up for like doing the virtual thing all day. I work virtually all day, and I don't want to sit in a meeting for 8 hours on the computer either.
right. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I backed out of this then.
So your business started with just you. How how has your team grown and evolved as your business has evolved?
Yeah, so kind of funky, kind of like any story, I had an office for a while in Camp Hill, and I had actual employees for a little bit. And then I went back and worked at home for a while. I had a couple contractors, and it was just kind of like hit or miss. There came a point where I finally realized I'm better off with just independent contractors, and they don't need to be here. And when I started getting larger clients and I started realizing the kinds of actual talent I needed, which was very specific, like I needed very specific skills, like a video editor, graphic designer, I needed specific writing skills, those types of things. That's when the team started growing the way I needed it to grow to fill those needs.
Mm,
So before, I think I was just like, I just need help, So it was like any old person that I could find, like to do something was what I was looking for, you know.
mm,
And I mean, I had some great employees, and some of those people ended up being my friends, and so my friends over the years. But I had interns that I'd end up hiring. But as far as like actual like moving the company forward and my growth forward, that didn't really happen again until like maybe I would say my growth point didn't really start happening until after maybe 2016. So I would say I was at least, oh, maybe I was at least 5, 6 years in before any kind of real growth started happening. And
what really? So
I,
you were
I,
running lean and so, not quite solo, but with
no joke, he called me a 7 year startup. So
interesting. Yeah, I talked to a guy earlier today he's starting his 6th year, and he still looks at himself as a startup. And I'm like, with the revenue, I think he said he was approaching 10 million in revenue. And I'm like, so you're 5 years in, 10 million by most accounts, especially my own, that's not a startup. And he goes, yeah, but if I'm comparing myself to Uber, they still think of themselves as a startup. And I'm like, I guess. So now that we're now that we're 15 years in, you can't call yourself a startup anymore. But what are some of the key differences, at year 15 versus, say those first 6, 7 when you were a startup?
Hmm.
Was was your team? Was it
Hmm.
clients?
Ah. Well, I think a part of it, a large part of it has to do with how much time you're spending on actually like in your business versus on your business, which is something
Mm.
we talk about all the time, and I was just flailing to get by to like, I'm just running and running and running. I'm servicing the customers and I'm pulling my hair out just to get everything done. And I didn't have the time to spend on the business. So now I can spend a large majority of my day on the business. I can do things like this. I can be doing my marketing. I can do whatever I need to do. I'm spending it with like my EVP or whatever it is that I need to do to focus forward. And that was not the case for a very long time. So when you're in growth mode or you're just trying to get by, you're really just like hanging on by the seat of your pants.
Hmm.
So fortunately, that's just entrepreneurship in a nutshell. And I don't care like what any business book tells you. Like it's not realistic to work 4 hours a day or a week when you're sorry, 4 hours a week when you're starting. I've not known any startup that you're working 4 hours a week and you're like in monumental growth. It's just not realistic. So, I mean, it might happen for some people, but I've never known anybody to do that and be successful in the first year or two. You just, I mean, it's just not realistic. Now, did I take a lot longer than the average person? Yes, absolutely. I'm glad where I'm at now, and I still have a way to go. I have a long way to go. Nobody's ever done.
Yeah, The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss is an interesting read, and I kind of look at it, and I've done courses and consortiums with other business coaches, outside of Vistage that have basically said, "Oh, I have a $10 million a year business and I work 10 hours a week," and I'm just thinking, really? And then I look at it, I'm like, "Oh, you've it wasn't always that way. They used to spend 80 hours a week working their business and they hired people and now they do the high level working on their business because their business can run without them. So it's more of a mental shift from going from the owner operator to the owner investor.
Mhm.
But unless you have substantial capital or leverage, almost impossible to be an investor seat right out the jump.
Right.
So, what are some of the changes that have occurred? I understand that your firm focuses heavily on social media. Social media, uh, I would say my first run at social media was the early 2000s when Zanga blogs were a thing and MySpace top eight. But how has it changed and evolved with, from the business aspect?
Mm. You mean from the early 2000s?
From when you started till now.
Goodness, yes. Oh gosh. Well, I mean, when I started, it was like Facebook was like it. Like you just had Facebook. You had like the main three, right? Like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter were like it. If you had a blog, like wow, you were so ahead of the game. And now there's so many things, and now it's like Facebook is uncool. And now it's X, and X is like so on the way out on so many levels. And there's just so many things. AI has obviously changed the game in every aspect of everything in marketing right now. Um, I think everybody's fearful about what that looks like, and I think we should just embrace it because it's actually exciting. Um, I just think it's exciting. People used to be scared of TikTok too. Like when it first came out, like it's all just crap, whatever, it's people dancing, and I'm still learning from my team, all the cool things that TikTok is and what it's about, and it's fascinating to me. There's just an abundance of things. There is still a lot of crap on the internet, and it still is a double-edged sword. I remember like LinkedIn used to just be like the only place where you could go, and it's just business. But every time I open my LinkedIn, I've got spam messages and it's annoying. But you're gonna have that no matter what. I just think, you have to find a way to make social media work for how you need to use it and what you want to use it for. But whatever you're doing as a business, you just can't do whatever you were doing 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or maybe even a year ago anymore. I mean, you used to be able to like blog once a week and you'd have search engine rankings and all that's great and wonderful. You're going to show up in Google. Like that's just not the case anymore. You just got to think so differently about how you show up on social media to make an impact. So many
Right.
different. things that are out there now, so many different ways you have to reach your audience.
Yeah, one of the memes that I saved when I was scrolling recently was that um it's like 10 years ago versus today. And 10 years ago is like Instagram, a photo with a caption and a bunch of hashtags. LinkedIn, a written blog post. And
Yeah.
I think I forget what the other channel was. Maybe it was Facebook or something. And now it's like every social media, short form viral content. And
Mhm.
so it's like if you're not doing anything with video, it seems like every time I open up a social media app, I'm just getting hit with like these quick
Yeah.
jump scenes and hyper edited like short form content.
There's still a place for long form content, I mean, and that in video as well. There's both of them come into play in different scenarios. There's just so much. You just have to find what it is that your audience wants to consume and how they want to consume it. So
Are,
much.
are
You
there
have
any social channels? Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
Are there any social channels that you just look at and you say, I'm not going to touch this?
Yeah, Snapchat. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. The Snapchat's definitely up there. We've been asked to manage that more than once, and I know it's not too much different than TikTok, but I just don't want to touch it. It's just one more thing to have to learn and do.
Yeah, that's probably the social media that if I say from 5 years ago, even till today, that I used that has the sharpest decline in my personal use is definitely Snapchat. I feel like they were, you know, they went to the moon right away with user acquisition and it was such a novel thing. And then the larger organizations were like, we're going to find the best parts of this and just put it on to Instagram and in the DM section and the stories and all that. And it's like, oh, and they just, in my opinion, they haven't acclimated to becoming like there's not a strong monetization model. It's almost like a texting platform, like a direct peer-to-peer messaging.
Right. You're absolutely right. I hear more about that than anything, the monetization aspects of it. And that's again why I don't really want to touch it.
Now, you mentioned before that Facebook was the king of the market. Do you still feel like Facebook is at the top of the food chain? Or, if you could solve one social media problem, what would you want to solve?
Depends on who you ask. It's kind of uncool now, but I think it's going to keep clinging, but I think they missed the mark a lot. Um, I don't know. It's man. The only reason I feel like they still have such a stronghold is because they still have so much data that we continue to feed them, and they still have Instagram. And Instagram is still a very strong platform.
Yeah, it seems like Facebook is geared more towards the older generation that when it first came out, they were like, oh, this is too new and confusing. And then it just became with a lasting power, they're like, oh, I know how to do this now. So for example, my mother, when it first came out, was like, I don't know how you're on Facebook. Or then when I went to college, she's like, let me go on so I can stay in touch. And then when I get back from college, she's like, I'm the maximum level in Candy Crush. And I'm like, you're a super Facebook user. And I think that my own family dynamic would not have been unique. I think a lot of I want to say the baby boomer generation is like heavy on Facebook because it's what they might know. But then, like you said, I think the younger generations gravitate more towards, Instagram if they're going to use Meta. So I, it all depends on what business you're trying to help market, I think.
Well, agreed. And I mean, it's still a strong advertising platform. I know some of my customers still use it for advertising purposes. It is still viable there. But I do know that a lot of my customers are spending less and less money on there because they can spend a lot more money and a lot less cost per transaction for things like the Google ads or Bing or the Roku ads, all kinds of different things than they could on Facebook. That's the reality. So
Yeah, it's interesting how streaming has changed too, right? Because going back in time, early 2010s, it was basically Netflix was the first to market, and that was they had to move away from mailing you DVDs and physical content
Yeah.
Now it's like even if you don't have a cable television subscription, you might still pay as much in subscription fees to watch television between Disney Plus and Hulu and all these other things.
I have, yes. I remember the days of getting the Netflix DVDs mailed to me. I
Hmm.
remember that. It's so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost look at marketing, well, social media specifically, but marketing as having a strong correlation between what the media industry does too. So like I have a toddler daughter. I don't keep her away from screens. I try to keep it, tame and make sure we're monitoring and making sure that like it's the right amount, or at least not excessive. But she watches Minnie Mouse. That's her new favorite thing. The episodes are 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. And I'm like, Disney has to be copying this short form TikTok type thing because she's just so engaged. And it feels like half the content is just the intro and outro. So anyway, to that point, I almost look at what's going on, like what happened with Blockbuster is almost parallel with what's happening with newspapers and television ads. Because I think you can, like you said, you can get cheaper CPMs and metrics when you do, for example, Google ads or Roku ads, geofencing, whatever you want to call the ad exchange digitally. And there's less and less consumption of newspaper and television, but I don't feel like the prices have gone down for these legacy media things. So what is your experience with either helping businesses transition off of legacy or working with legacy? When I say legacy, I mean like newspaper, TV.
So what's funny is I have a background in journalism, so I first have to kind of like mourn a little bit.
Mm,
Um, it's a lot to think about, but it's really just you're just moving from one thing to another. That's it. It's just a platform change. And you have to adapt constantly. That's it. We're just moving from one thing to another. That's all it is. So we not have a physical newspaper, but you could see it online.
hmm.
That's it. It just takes some getting used to. Do I miss the physical newspaper? Sometimes, yes. I'm on the computer all day. I'm on my phone all day. Sometimes it's nice to have a physical newspaper. I read physical books. I don't have an e-reader. People are surprised to hear that. Just nice to break it up. It's all just transitioning.
Yeah, I mean, as you can tell from my background, I'm a big physical book person too. And I think, like you said, it's interesting that theme of same with networking. Like there's just a part of human connection that when you work in digital industry, you're just like, I kind of crave in-person stuff or like tangible.
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, are there any industries that you find that you gravitate more towards than others to like serve or, you know, it, do you have like a certain set of client that you're really like get excited about working with
Certain set of clients, so certain
or
like
industry?
we love working with entertainment. Like broadcast and media. We work with a broadcasting station that's kind of like, well, we work with BYU TV and they're great. It's very wholesome entertainment, and it's great because it's family content, and so it can be absorbed by anybody, and it does really well. Anytime you can find entertaining content that can be shared on social media, that's a win for us. When we're working with industries that are difficult to share on social media, that's just not as interesting as others, that could be a challenge. But we also
Mm,
work with some pet agencies and nonprofits, and that's fun too. Like I'm very passionate about pets and animals, and I see you have a dog in the background there. And I have a cat on my lap. So definitely animal organizations, anything in that realm, we love working with. And anything visual. I know that sounds trite, but it's hard to work with some types of service providers that you can't get any visual content from. When we work with some of the folks that we could get great content from that are like, so like, well, we have a joint client, we work with a coach, or a Vista share or something like that. When we could get that ongoing content, it's great when we can work with like what do you call them? Like SMEs, or somebody like that. That's great. But when we work with somebody that you can't get content from, that's always a challenge. But anybody you could get content from, is our deal for us. Can't get content or it's not interesting. That's not that's a little bit more of a challenge.
Hmm.
But yeah, I would say entertainment, animals, and anything that's kind of content heavy and interesting.
Yeah, it's really difficult to do great marketing for on especially on social media for brands or companies that don't have something that people go to social media to put their attention into, right? I mean, if I were to do a demographic analysis on my mom's Facebook usage back in the day, it was animal stuff and babies and like just news about entertainment that she would have watched on television, but she wants it now versus waiting till the 6 o'clock slot or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
yeah.
so looking into the future, what are some trends in social media that you think will take shape or, could be coming around the corner in 2025?
Hmm. Well, I think we're still going to keep seeing more long form content, and I think that more so like the video, like you're seeing, how Instagram is now going for 3 minutes reels, TikTok went to 10-minute videos, YouTube went to 3 minutes shorts. I think we're going to keep seeing longer form content in that type of form. Even though our attention spans are shorter, people want to see longer video content. I think the AI content is going to keep saturating the world, but I think that it's going to create a larger demand for more human content. People are really going to crave that human stuff, and I think that's going to be key for storytelling. And I know storytelling is like overused and sounds like boring, but if you've seen a really great storyteller, you know what I mean. Somebody who could tell that story and you're so mesmerized by that story. So like, why is social media content boring? So
Hmm.
I want to hear people tell a really good story and keep me engaged. And I want it to come from like a real human. I want it to be like authentic. So I think that's going to be key and not something from just AI.
Yeah, I
And
love that question you posited. It's like, what makes social media content boring,
yeah,
right? That's such a fun way to think about it.
I
What do
mean,
you think makes social media content boring?
well, you've read it. Like they're counting on either an image to just speak for itself, or
Hmm.
they're just like, hey, check this out. And that's it. It's like, great, I'm really engaged with that.
Like sloppy storytelling.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. Sloppy storytelling. They put any energy into it at all.
I think there was a period of time where, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm a historian of social media. I don't want to date myself too much, but I remember there was a period of time where I would see random things pop up in my feed just because they were highly liked and they were just beautifully taken photos, like a photographer, but there was nothing there. It was just a photo. And I see that way less and less and less and less now, where if I get new stuff that it's not from someone I follow, it's discovery. It's like optimized minimum a couple sentences up to like, links and tagging and all like making sure that you check all the boxes for filling out the complete details.
Yeah.
I don't see that artistic. I mean, artistic photography still does show up for me and I think others, but not without all the other boxes checked for saying this is what it is internet.
Mm.
I don't know if you've seen that trend too. It's just so crazy to think about like how it's changed.
So you're not so you're probably seeing any AI generated stuff, but not like the authentic stuff anymore. Like the stuff that
I don't even know if it's just AI. It's just that I knew people that were photographers that crushed it that didn't write any captions and now they're just like, why isn't it hitting the same? And it's like because you're not telling a story.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Stuff that really captures your attention.
The other thing that's interesting on the other side of it too, I've seen people that are really great storytellers get like no engagement. And I think about this, it's like the new iPhone, for example, has a camera in it that's more powerful than the high-end camera I bought 10 years ago. So the advance of technology in being able to take decent quality content that's not, yeah, let's just say all, like if it's the same story, like if you have a new smartphone, the utility in it for business is like you can really put your best foot forward with the assets now versus if you were using your phone's camera before, people like that's blurry and that looks like crap, like it detracts from the story. So when you're working with clients, and this is something that I need to reflect on, and let's say they're open to getting you content, right? They want to give you photography and video, and you know, there's nothing, there's no unwillingness or capacity issues on like their willingness to get content. But like, what do you tell them in order to better, like to improve their content? Is it like get the new iPhone or is it something else?
Well, I mean, a lot of them, like they have like professional people that will photograph their stuff,
Mm,
on site and do stuff for our local clients. But we'll give them pointers. Like we give them like a one sheet for doing all of their stuff. But remember, we're really lucky. Some of our biggest client, they're a broadcasting company, so we're getting professional stuff.
right.
For everybody else, yeah, that's tough. There's been stuff fortunately we have a graphic designer, a video editor who could like do her magic, but you can't, as they say, polish a turd sometimes. So there's a lot of times where you got to make do, with what you have. And that it is funny what you said, that we have these really nice iPhones, but a lot of us don't know how to use them.
Mm,
I
that's a
had
real thing. Yeah.
I had a birthday party for my dad this weekend, and I'm obviously like trying to do the whole birthday party thing. So I'm relying on everybody else to get the photos and videos, and like they're sending them all to me. And I'm like, oh no, like these are all blurry. It's like, crap. So
Yeah.
everyone needs a 101 how to use their iPhone.
That's actually incredibly interesting. You're so right because I have the same exact phone as my wife, and her pictures always end up being just better quality, and it's because she knows how to use it better. Not that I don't know how to use a phone; it's just I'm not like. There's a reason there's professional photographers in the world.
Well, I mean, it's all really comes down to lighting. That's the main thing. And we always give the clients the tips on the lighting. If nothing else, have the lighting down when you're getting pictures. Nothing is worse than having bad lighting, because you could have the most beautiful product, but if the lighting is horrible, it's going to make it look like crap.
Do you notice anything different about the screen?
Yeah, I noticed you turned the light on.
Yeah, that's been the best $20 on Amazon. I could make a business investment.
Unfortunately, this podcast is mostly audio, right?
Actually, mine's 99% video.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Most
Yeah,
people.
so we could talk about podcasting. I think that'd be a fun topic. We have some time left on the show, so I I'm so excited that I felt like, because I've been doing this for this show basically since I started my business, and it started with like a Bluetooth microphone that I had from my old office and no camera. And I was just doing like rants, right? Solo rants and trying to make some thought leadership content when I just started, just practicing. Then I started doing interviews with it where we would have the bi-directional and then we just talk around, and kind of felt weird to people because it was like, oh, there's no cameras, and it was fine. There was some good conversations. And then it developed into I would only do video in person, which was really limiting to like local people I could find the time. And then I started adding lights and like different multi-directional camera angles and blah, blah. I was like really deep into it. And then I realized that like 9 out of 10 of my podcast guests that want to be on would prefer to do it virtually. So I upgraded this, and it's like, okay, each time I iterated, I started seeing like a difference. And I still think in person is like ideal. It's just really tough.
Yeah.
It's not like we live in like Las Vegas or like New York where it's an airport hub where people can come in, whatever. But for my podcast, I found that YouTube outperforms audio right now on a scale from like 100 to 1. Audio is still consistent though, because people will listen to the whole thing in a car ride or something. And then as far as putting clips on social, I found that Instagram Reels is like number one by a lot. TikTok, I think for what I put out there is like doesn't really hit. Like some videos will get a couple hundred, if not 1,000. but most of them get less than 10 because it just doesn't really hit the audience. I think it's maybe it, who they're serving it to and just not as interested. Facebook for me has done nothing. Like it's the worse than TikTok. And I think I just don't promote it. I don't like put dollars behind or boost it. Or I just haven't, I don't know, haven't cracked Facebook. But YouTube has been, I've gotten, I think this yesterday I hit over 50,000 downloads on YouTube. And honestly, Rachel, 30K of them were this year. So I've been doing podcasts for 2.5 years, and over half of it's been in 2 months, which has been nuts.
Wow. It's the consistency probably paid off. That's a big payoff too, just the consistency. But I think you doing it and you having the background, having great guests, it's showing up and doing it consistently. Good for you, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, not a brag. I mean, I just think it's like insane that I worked harder before, you know,
But you know what? Effortless. Like
there's a system.
you're in the flow, like it has.
Yeah.
I just started my podcast journey last year. I'm on my second podcast, the second season. I'm just now starting to get more comfortable with podcasting. So it takes time to really start to become more natural with it.
Yeah. I mean, when I talk to somebody that, is way further in their YouTube, like tens of thousands of subscribers, and we talked and he's like, yeah, I spend $1,000 just editing each video.
Wow.
And I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, oh, he's like, yeah, but I've gotten $8 million of leads worth of from like my, $1,000 per episode of like 40 episodes.
Different.
But like, I think that the content game is exponential. Like when you get better stuff, it does not like if you double how good your stuff is, it's not like you get twice as many views. You get like 10 times, 100 times more. Not that my stuff's the, bee's knees, but I found that by having these systems, like you said with the one pager, when you have clients you want to get the good content from, it's like now I have intake questionnaires, now I have a video editing process, and I have got like tools for it. Like I didn't do that before. I just threw stuff against the wall that was raw files, and I'm like, hopefully it sticks. And I think for anyone listening out there, I mean, one of the stories you told, Rachel, was it took you 7 years to get past the hair pulling, startup phase. And now you have like a whole team that has specific job functions, and you
Right.
have like national clients that are all over the country. But like, if you don't stick with it, like, don't be upset about the results you didn't get for the work you didn't do.
Right.
So that's something that I don't know. I took away from your story. It's just like you, you've hung in there and put in the work, which is pretty admirable.
But you also, you know what? You also have to know when to call it quits. And, I'm sure there are projects that you knew when it was time to fold too. This was something you
Oh,
stuck because you knew it had the potential.
yeah, easy, easy. I want a quick story. I sent 35,000 emails and got 0 booked calls. And I
And
was like, oh, maybe if I send 40, it'll be different. It's like, nope, it's not, So I switched that whole program and I sent 480 emails and got like 40 booked calls. And I was like, oh, look, I wish I would have done this sooner.
Mhm.
Is there anything in your business that you had that aha where you're like, I wish I would have done this sooner?
Mm, man, you know what? Gosh, really, the biggest thing was just letting go of fear and bullshit. Like, there were so many times where like you just didn't have I lost the confidence in something, or like I'm afraid the client would be upset with me, or I just didn't speak up about something, whatever it was. Like once you let go of that type of thing, which was so minor in retrospect, it
Mm.
became so much more clear because it held me back from really just getting the stuff done that needed to get done.
So it's more of a mindset shift than it is like a tactical.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's just comes from experience too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the marks of a healthy business is when you can say goodbye to a client. Like if you can let a client go. I
Yeah.
think that's when like, okay, you got stable ground, at least as stable as it can be for an entrepreneur.
And I mean, I've done that many times. More than anything, where we're at is we don't bring a client on until we're 100% that they're the right fit for us.
Mm.
That's actually the harder part, and what makes it healthier then, is we have to make sure they're the right fit for us for
Onboarding versus offboarding.
yeah, yeah, the onboarding for yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you said earlier in the show that when you first were getting help from 1099s or employees, you're just like, I need help in general. Like, I know you need help, like you need something to do, I need someone. But it seems like you've also been more intentional, not just with your team, but your clients.
Yes,
I think it's theoretically they go hand in hand.
yes, very much so, very much so. And but you know what? We're never done. I'm still figuring out, more and more things every day. And we're also in an industry that is ever changing. So in 3 weeks from now, I could be singing a different tune. So
Yeah,
we're
well, you're darn right about that. I hired a vendor, like a software vendor, to do something specific for marketing. And then I talked to someone that we mutually know, and he's like, "Oh, I just built this thing with AI." And I'm like, "I just spent lots of money to buy this thing that you just built."
Mhm.
And I'm like, "That wasn't an option when I was shopping, but now I'm reconsidering what I did, and maybe I'll switch over." Like
uh
that happens in that it's 4 weeks. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, it keeps you on your toes, that's for sure. Yeah, you can't get complacent, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
hey, this has been awesome. I think the great thing about marketing and talking with people like you is we learn from each other, and it's you need to because you don't have it all figured out. You can't in this business, and even as an entrepreneur, especially.
No, and like you said earlier with these mentorships and networking, it's like you can have a conversation with someone like you have with Jeffrey that completely changes your business, and it just one conversation can change the whole trajectory. So I'm hoping that people listening, maybe they can get that as a take home, is it just takes one conversation and that can like one limiting belief change to something positive. You can completely change your outcome.
But notice even with Jeffrey, I made all the changes, but I'm still a 7-year startup. It takes many conversations, many mentors, many people, and much mindset change, till you get there. It's an ongoing battle.
Yeah. I think to compare that with podcasting, not to say that I'm, in my mind, I still have a huge amount to grow and improve in podcasting, but at least I can say I've done 250 podcast episodes in my life.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like what happens if I do 2,500? It's like one of the marketers that I follow, he goes, "Don't even look at your analytics until you publish 100 shows." I was like, that's such a crazy paradigm shift because I have people that they're starting a podcast or a YouTube channel, and after video one or two, they're like, "How are we doing?" And is it viral? And I'm like, you've got about 99 more to go before I'm going to start taking that question like to heart.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I think it counts more like who's actually listening to it. You could film 1,000 and no one cares. I think when you start developing people that are listening to your message, it matters more than how many you've taped.
Yeah, I think you're right. The audience is a compounding asset, not the vanity metrics. Cool. Well, hey, Rachel, I know we're coming up close on time. The last question I have for you is super light, is where can people find more about Strella social media and Rachel Strella?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ross. Yeah, you can find me on my website if you need me.
StrellaSocialMedia.com.
Yep.
All right. That's it for today, everyone listening. Um, th you listening and sharing the show means the world to me. I never want to run ads. My only request is if you found this episode entertaining, share it with a friend. Until next time, Thunderstock Show is out.